Here. Just wanted to take a couple of minutes and show off some of what the visual dialogue editor for Warped Radar can do. Would love for people to understand it well enough that they're happy to take advantage of it and create some great dialogue for the game, and or tell me what things it needs to improve on in order for them to really use it. So Kisei has already shown off some of the things it can do, but she hasn't had the opportunity to see everything, and I'd like to just spend a few minutes talking about how the editor works. There's three main ways to create dialogue in the editor. You can, first way is to create everything right here in the editor, start from scratch. And that goes similar to how Kisei has shown it in the past. So you create a new card, and you get your new dialogue card, and you get this first scene field. You can name each card or page of the dialogue with a unique name, or you can duplicate names, or you can skip the field altogether. The system uses an internal index in order to determine where to go next if it needs to. So we can do this as the Hello World card or something like that. And then we also can pick which image is on the left side of the screen during gameplay, so we can do the John Happy pick if we want, and then which image is on the right side of the screen, so we could do Rose Annoyed pick, something like that. And then as you've seen in the past, we can choose the speaker. Right now we only have John and Rose characters listed in there, but I'll show you later how to add additional characters. So John, and you can see that it changes the color of the card to blue. And then if we switch it over to Rose, you get red. So each of the characters kind of has their own color combination here, so that we can kind of see visually, big picture wise, who's doing the talking without having to read necessarily the line items. So we'll go ahead and switch this back to John. And then during gameplay and the dialogue, one or more of the pictures might leave the screen during the conversation, and so that's what these stay fields are for. So do they stay? Typically they stay for the next statement, but not always. So that's how that goes there. And then this is the line item for the actual text. So this could be, hello world, something like that. So saying howdy. And you notice when I clicked in here, I got this blue box. That's the beginning of a transition, so you can control which dialogue card comes next. So if you don't have any of these transitions listed, the system defaults to the next card that you created, which, since you can't change the order in which you create the cards, you lose a lot of control if you don't take advantage of these transitions. So like I said, this is the origin of a transition. If we create a new card, I can show you how to create the actual transition. So you just click the next card and you get the arrow showing you that we go from this card to this card, and we can move this arrow around a little bit so that we can get the arrow to be shorter or longer if we want it to be, mostly so that there's an opportunity to avoid having them crisscross and create a lot of spaghetti in there. We can move the origin over to the right hand side as well if we like, so this gives us the opportunity to do this. And if we want to create branching dialogue, we can use the plus button here, and that'll give us another text field, so we can say, hey, this is option 2, and then notice when I clicked in there, I got another opportunity to do origin transition here. So we create another new card. We can click down here in order to create the branch. Now, if we decide, hey, you know what, option 2 should come over to this item and Hello World should come down here, we can do that. What we can't do is just drag this over here. That would be super convenient. I haven't figured out how to do that yet, so that doesn't work. But what you can do is click on either the triangle or the square, either way, and hit the backspace or delete key, and it'll delete that transition altogether. Similarly, with this item, you can either the triangle or the square and delete it. So then we can choose which one goes where now, and that's how we create some branching dialogue. Now, if you create another option here and, hey, this is an option we didn't want, then you can hit the minus key, and that one's gone. So that's how you can add and remove options to create the branching dialogue. Once you're satisfied with how the dialogue is looking, or if you reach a point where you want to pause, you can save this out so that it creates the correct format for the game to take advantage of. Before we can do that though, we have to name the conversation. So this could just be, you know, test dialogue, something like that. The reason we need to do that is because the name of the conversation is used as the variable name in the game. So if we create this with a space in the middle there, this will work, but what happens is that the code adds this underbar instead of the space so that this is a valid variable. So that works fine, and we should be able to just copy this output right here, and we can drop it into our editable conversations. So this is a JS file that is inside the dialogue editor folder, which is inside the Warped Radar folder. So we can just replace this editable code here, or editable conversation, with what we just copied, and then save. If we reload, we should be able to click the Open Dialog button and use the second option for editing. So here we go. So you can see it recreated the dialogue as we had it set up before. So that's how you'd go about doing iterative work on a dialogue. Now, saving it in that file does not add it to the game at all. So in order to add your dialogue to the game, once you're ready for that, you have to go into this dialog lines.js, which is in the Warped Radar folder, not in the dialogue editor folder, and add it in. So, you know, give it a variable name either by saving it here or handwriting one in as you go, and then this is where it would be accessible to the actual game. So that's how you use the new card to do full editing in the game, and that's how you open up an existing dialogue in order to do continued editing on it. And then the final option is to hit choose file. This is pretty ugly, but seemed like a lot of work to try and clean it up a little bit. So if we do choose file and we navigate to a properly formatted text file, which happens to be this one, and click open and then hit open text, what it does is it takes that text and it converts it to a bunch of cards, so that the idea being that if you didn't want to create a lot of use a lot of syntax in order to manually write you know, if you didn't want to write this kind of stuff in order to write your dialogue, you just wanted to write it like a script. John says hello, Rose says, oh hi, how are you? Then John can either say, I'm good, or he can say, meh. If you surround that by brackets, the system knows to create the opportunity for some branching dialogue. So you can see here that there's a lot of data missing. So you could not save this out to the console and then use that in the game. You have to add a lot of additional information, like, you know, the images need to be added in, whether they stay or go needs to be added in, and then you also need to add transitions. So you can do that, but it's a lot faster if you find it easier to create the dialogue using the text editor. So that's the final option for how to use the editor to create dialogue for the game. A couple of other things that I'd like to talk about here is, if you wanted to add a new character, you go into globals. This is the JS file, globals.js, inside the dialogue editor folder. And then you would just add a speaker. All right, so we're right here. So say cat is cat. We're going to use single quotes though, just for consistency. And then you need to add a color. So we can just copy this and then change this to cat, and then change this to background. So this is the fill color, right? So for Rose it's pink. For cat we're going to make it yellow. And then the lines, so for Rose it's red, but for cat we're going to use dark blue, just like we have for John. So that should be enough. We'll save that. We ought to be able to do a reload, new card, speaker, and you see cat shows up. Now we can choose cat and it changes the card to match the cat's colors. So that's how we go about adding cat. Now it doesn't create new images that easily. So what we can do is you have to go into the image loading. So this is imageloading.js inside the dialog editor folder again. And then you'd have to create a constant with the the variable name for the image. You have to add a string name for the image as well inside this image for string function. And then you actually have to load the image here. And this is typical for how we load images in Gamketo, this part of it. I've added this speaker piece that we need in order to take advantage of just inside the dialog editor. Now, you'll need to use the same string as you have for the variable name, and this variable name needs to match the variable name in the actual game. So adding the images is a little bit more involved than just adding a new speaker to the dialog editor, but it'll work great, and I hope people take advantage of it and that we get some really great dialogue. Please let me know what I can do to make it better. Thanks. Hey everyone, just a quick postscript to my previous recording. I forgot to talk about how to copy paste dialog cards. So if you wanted to, you could pick some default values for a dialog here, and then you can see when you've selected it, you've got the bold lines around it, so you know that you've got this dialog card selected. Then you can do Command or Control C and then Command or Control V to paste it, and it'll keep those defaults for you, so that if you find yourself in a situation where you have a long series of items where none of this stuff changes, you can just continue to paste those items in there without having to redo all of that. So just one last item there. Thanks.